RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. This is your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions on diet, training, supplementation, IFBB, pros, news, competitions, whatever's on your mind, it is all on the table as we now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, some exciting news on the RX Muscle front as we welcome in a new advertiser on board.
Yeah, as you guys probably know, I'm very good friends with Jimmy Mentis, and Jimmy just acquired Liquid Sunrays to add to his portfolio of companies, along with his Beauty Fit. And he'll be actually in the studio next week. We're going to be doing a cool interview about that and the history of tanning and stuff like that. So that should be fun, especially since Jimmy and I go back to the days of Dioderm and Protan when they first started out. So this is exciting because, Liquid Sunrays is a great tanning product. It's probably got the best color out there at this time in the industry. And Jimmy's trying to revolutionize how we tan people and take it to a higher level. Back in the day, guys would have terrible tans. Some guys would look green. Nowadays, stepping on stage with anything less than a perfect tan is a shame, shame, shame on you. And Jimmy, the Liquid Sunrays company, is usually at all the shows, and you can easily sign up with them and have them tan you. And what used to take hours and hours and hours of painting on this tan now takes 10 minutes. So there's no excuse for not having a perfect tan anymore.
So again, welcome Liquid Sunrays on board, the newest RX Muscle advertiser. Right now on RxMuscle.com, yesterday we were sent pictures of Big Rami's latest progress pictures by Badr Budai, the head owner of Oxygen Gym. That video is live right now at RxMuscle.com. Dave offers his opinions on Big Ramy 10 weeks out from the Olympia. Watch for it today or tomorrow. We have a great two-part interview with Dan Solomon. He's the voice of the Olympia live broadcast. He came in and Dave and Dan had some really good insights into this upcoming Olympia, some of the new changes, of course, the new People's Champ rule, and so much more. Let's get to the questions. The first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. The first question, what are the top three ingredients for enhancing brain cognitive function in your opinion, when to take, and anything we can naturally do as well?
I hate to say it, but it's so simple. A cup of coffee is probably the best, stimulant you could probably use for alertness. I don't do stimulants because I have like a heart arrhythmia, that kicks in if my heart rate gets too high. Normally at rest I don't have any problems with it. I'm not even aware of it. But I don't do stimulants for that very reason. I don't need to push my heart. So I don't do stimulants, but I'll tell you something. I drank a cup of coffee the other day, a half a cup, and I was so alert. My whole brain fog went completely away. I became super focused. There's really nothing better than that. The problem is that everyone uses these stimulants every single day in excessive amounts, and they don't work anymore. So what's the best brain stimulant or the best thing for mental alertness? Really, like I said, a little bit of caffeine. The key is don't abuse it. I'm coming out with a product. We're trying to formulate. It's formulated already. We're trying to put the whole thing together. It's called Neurolyze. It's going to contain a whole bunch of different the topic. This is funny because back in the 90s we talked about nootropics. Bill Phillips did in his book The Anabolic Reference Guide, and I think the one nootropic that existed at the time was piracetam, and we used to try to use it as bodybuilders, and it worked a little bit. It really wasn't anything great. But now they have a lot of natural supplements that when you put together synergistically kind of create almost like a mental focus type situation. And that's what I'm trying to do with the Neurolyze product. I was originally going to put the same formula into a pre-workout, but I'm like, I think people are basically confusing pre-workouts with focused products, and I don't think you need to do the two together necessarily. I think they should be divided because not everyone wants to take a pre-workout and be stimulated out of their mind because they take it at night, because they train at night, and then they can't sleep at night. So rather than what I used to do is produce two pre-workouts, Neutralized with caffeine, Neutralized without it. I'm just going to go with a pure neuro-focused type product. And then if I want to put together a pre-workout, I'll put together a stim-free pre-workout because I don't think you need to put the stims in there. If a pre-workout's good, you should feel the pump, you should feel the endurance. That has nothing to do with the stimulant portion of the product. So that's how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to, like I said, the question was, what's the best, brain stimulant? It's caffeine, really, right off the bat. But how you make the caffeine more effective is how the other compounds come into play. And once that product comes out, I will explain what my scientific approach was to putting that together.
Second question from Wasim. Under what conditions and time of day do we want high cortisol? Do you ever suggest trying to control it? And if so, what are the benefits to this?
Well, in the morning is when cortisol levels are highest. That's just our natural circadian rhythms dictate that. So that's why I was always a big believer of doing, like growth hormone, your injections in the morning to try to counteract some of that, catabolic effect of cortisol. Now, cortisol is important because when your blood sugar drops, there's two hormones that can raise blood sugar. Glucagon, which is produced by your pancreas, kind of does the opposite of insulin. It takes whatever glucose to store or glycogen storage in the muscles or livers, and it liberates it. It turns it into glucose, puts it into the bloodstream, raises blood sugar. Cortisol, which is produced by the adrenal glands, can raise blood sugar, but it does it by a different mechanism. It takes amino acids, and usually in the liver, a little bit in the kidneys, and it converts it into glucose. That's known as gluconeogenesis. So it's actually making new glucose that was never around. Whereas glucagon takes existing stored glucose and liberates it. So they work by different mechanisms. So you don't want to have zero cortisol because it's a safety net in your body. In other words, your liver is always monitoring, and your pancreas for that matter, how much blood glucose is in there. When you're sleeping at night, a lot of times, your blood glucose can drop. That's when cortisol raises blood sugar while you're sleeping. That's why people who don't have good blood sugar control notice when they wake up in the morning, their fasting blood sugars can be high, okay? Because their bodies can't manage, because think about it, when you produce glucose into the bloodstream, the pancreas has to release insulin so you can absorb that glucose. If your insulin production is not optimal, for whatever reason, you're taking growth hormone, your pancreas is stressed out, maybe it's a little burnt out, you might be, bordering on diabetes, you're not gonna be able to have good blood sugar control. So, to get back to the question, cortisol is important, but we don't want excessive amounts of it in the body.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. First question from Hoodman521. The best movement for a thicker middle back is supported upper torso movements as effective as bent over movements.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go. When you're trying to really target those little middle back muscles, the rhomboids, and really, it's really the lower part of the traps too we're talking about, because the traps go all the way down the middle of your back, in the middle there. And when you try to target those small muscle groups, you're better off doing rowing movements with like a pad against your chest, because it kind of forces you to not cheat with other muscles, and it really targets those muscles. When you're doing those exercises, weight should not be really a priority. It should be the squeeze and how you're really feeling that muscle really just, pulling back there. If you're just feeling your arms doing the movement and you're just kind of hurling the weight, then you're really not targeting those little middle back muscles. I've seen a lot of guys that are super strong on bent rows, deadlifts, pull downs, and they have no middle back detail. And that's because they just don't target those muscles. They use the other muscles to compensate so they can lift heavier. So that's why I always broke down, do your basic heavy movements first, pull downs, bent rows, one arm rows, then go to at the end of your back workout, go to your isolation type back movements where you have the pad. Whether it be sitting in a rowing machine with the pad against you, or leaning over in that one where the pad sits against your chest and you pull up. Those are great because they force those middle back muscles to work.
PR Dip, my question is the best option to get shredded, Clen versus ECA stack, like Black Mamba, and can I use T4 rather than T3 to stack with the above option because T4 is cheap and I want to know the dosage of T3.
Yeah, the clenbuterol is the best fat burner you can use, really. I mean, it's so much better than ephedra and caffeine that there's no comparison. So if you have access to clenbuterol, obviously I would choose that. I like to stack it with T3, or it's the brand name being Cytomel in the United States, Cynomel in Mexico, and then other names in different places. But T3 is the active ingredient. Now you don't really want to use T4 because T4 is an inactive thyroid hormone. If you put T4 into your body, okay, and you have normal thyroid output, 99% chance none of it will ever convert to T3 because your body just doesn't need anymore. So if you're trying to boost thyroid output, it's thyroid hormone levels in your body, functional thyroid levels, active thyroid hormone levels, you want to take T3. So taking T3 with clenbuterol has that synergism of increasing fat burning pretty significantly.
Soviet made, how common is sleep apnea among bodybuilders, and what can one do besides CPAP to treat sleep apnea?
The only way to treat sleep apnea without a CPAP machine is to lose weight. I mean, look, I was never a snorer my whole life. Then I started bodybuilding, I got big. When I hit about 250, 260, I started snoring. When I was 300, I snored like a grizzly bear. When I lost the weight, the snoring went away. I don't snore anymore. I had 100, whatever I am, 90 pounds. So for me, it was always a weight issue, which kind of, my neck was big and it would close off your neck a little bit. Other people I know guys that have sleep apnea at 150 pounds. Those people, you gain 100 pounds in their body and they're gonna die at night from sleep apnea. They need a CPAP machine. So if you wanna be big and huge and eat a lot of food and hold a lot of weight, and you have sleep apnea, which probably 90% of bodybuilders do because when they get that big, you gotta use the machine. That's all there is to it. I mean, it sucks, but otherwise you just can't be that big. I mean, no one wants to, shorten your life because you have sleep apnea. Plus, if you don't sleep well, you're not going to recover from your workouts and build muscle adequately. I think that I probably had to sleep longer when I was bodybuilding because I didn't use a CPAP machine. That became kind of in vogue almost after I stopped competing. So I would have to sleep 10 hours a night probably to get enough sleep because I wasn't getting a restful night's sleep, and I would take naps during the day. So once again, if you want to get good quality sleep, you got to get one of those machines.
Sugar J Fitness, is it true your best time to make growth is coming after a show due to your body being depleted for a long period of time? Can you touch on that subject?
Sure. It's a good question. I was just talking to a woman about that last night on the phone, and after a show, because you've been depleting so long and knocking body fat off, your body wants to store things. Now, here's the interesting thing. It wants to store everything. It wants to store calories as fat. It wants to store glucose as carbs as glycogen, and it wants to store protein as muscle. What we want to exploit is the ability of the body wanting to make muscle tissue, okay? So what we do post, contest is we eat, but if you eat tons and tons of carbs, you're gonna get fat, okay? As well as muscular. If you eat a lot of protein, you're gonna put muscle on, okay? And that's just the way it is. Now, obviously, the first thing that happens when you eat a lot of carbs is your glycogen stores get filled up. It's great. You feel nice and pumped and full and strong in the gym. Once they're topped off, which takes a couple days, the rest of those extra carbs now will start going into fat storage because your body wants to store. So you see it more in women because women have, women can sometimes eat as much as men after a show. Now, if men and women are both eating the same thing, who do you think is going to get fat? The women, because they don't need as many calories. So what you want to do after show is maximize your diet. In other words, get enough protein in, get enough essential fats in your diet, and then eat enough carbs to fuel your workouts and to do what you got to do and max out your glycogen stores, but not enough that you're going to start getting fat. And how do you know that? Trial and error. Trial and error, you'll see. You'll know when you start getting too fat and then you back off a little bit. But you will grow. I know guys, most guys after a show, I clean them out. They do HCG, they do Clomid, and then they're off. And obviously the stuff that you've been taking is still going to be in your system for quite a number of weeks, 3 to 4 weeks after the show. So you're going to get a rebound and a nice boost no matter what. You don't have to stay on gear. Matter of fact, if you go off the gear, you get hungrier because gear is toxic to your body and it usually blunts your appetite a little bit. You might not even realize it until you go off. When you go off the gear, all of a sudden you get starved. You can't stop eating. That's good as long as you're eating the right foods and training, because that combination of the training, okay, and eating is going to build muscle at a much accelerated rate because your body wants to store things. But remember, what you store is dependent on what you eat.
Lewis Green, the first Dave, what were some of your craziest thoughts when you were dieting for a show? Contest prep drives people insane, and we think of all sort of kooky stuff. How did you stop yourself from going mad when on contest prep?
I'm such a creature of habit. The fact that I would have a cheat meal once a week, for me, was like salvation. I would diet so hard knowing that when that Friday night or whatever it was, Saturday night came along and it was time to go to that all-you-can-eat sushi place in Manhattan that I would go to every week. Because back in the 90s, there was like one place in Manhattan that had just started doing this all-you-can-eat sushi thing. There weren't sushi buffets back then. And I loved this one place. And I would go into the city. It was like a 45-minute ride from Long Island. Every single week when I would contest diet, I never missed. We would drive in there, and we would go eat sushi, and it didn't matter if it was a torrential snowstorm or rain, I made it into that freaking restaurant. They knew me in there. I was in there every weekend. And that's my salvation, and that's what made me diet so hard during the week. If I felt like cheating or if I started getting really bad, I would leave the house. I would clean the house. I would do anything I had to distract myself. And that's what you got to do. If you want to be the best, cheating is not an option, okay? A designed cheat meal is, but you can't just randomly say, well, I deserve it. I've been suffering and I'm starving and this is not right. I don't feel, life isn't right. It doesn't feel right. It's not normal to starve to death, right? It's not normal to be hungry all the time and to dream at night about food buffets. But that's what bodybuilding is about. It's about who can endure more torture to look better than the next guy. And I never wanted to get up on that stage and say, you know what, that guy suffered more than I did, because you know what, that was not an option. I was going to do everything I could to be my best. Now, I couldn't control my structure. I couldn't control how much muscle I had achieved. Whatever I had to be maximized. And the things I can control were diet, my tan, and my presentation. And I always try to maximize that to the best of my ability.
Prime time, how do you bring out striations in the hamstrings for rear poses? I'm pretty lean everywhere else. Is it just stubborn fat or a posing issue?
Well, it can be a combination of how you pose the muscle. If you can move your leg around and in certain angles, all of a sudden you see a ton of detail, then you're just not flexing it right on stage. Now, you could also, the muscle could be too flat, maybe because you're not carved up enough, or you could be in a depleted state. More than likely, when I see it, most people who don't have hamstring, I guess a lot of detail showing, it's one of two things. It's easy, they're not lean enough, which is usually the case, or they don't have enough muscle back there. You could be super crazy ripped and just have like loose skin back there, and you can't figure out why there's nothing popping. Well, the reason nothing's popping is you don't have enough muscle back there. The same reason why some guys don't get glutes, because they lose all the fat there, they got loose skin there, but there's no muscle there, or not enough muscle there to stretch that skin tight. The only way to solve that problem is to add more muscle.
Let's go to M. Luigi's. Dave, hate the show. Opinions about a fibrous supplement without psyllium husk. Is psyllium husk a must?
I'll tell you why psyllium is a must. Because when you're talking about soluble fiber products, okay, the highest naturally occurring source of fiber in foods would be oat bran, okay? To compare oat bran to psyllium, okay, you'd need 8 grams of oat bran to equal 1 gram of psyllium in a potency on a potency level. Therefore, if you're taking, let's say you're taking my Fiberlize, which has about 9 grams of psyllium per serving in it, okay, you would need 9 times 8, 72 grams of oat bran to equal that one little scoop of Fiberlize. No one's going to eat that much oat bran. You know how many grams of carbs would come with that? So it's almost impossible to get what you need on a daily basis from food sources. When you see these other crappy fibers on the market that have xanthan gum in them and all these these very soluble fibers, these very water soluble fibers that kind of disappear like Bena fiber, they're crap. They don't do anything. They have no potency. You know what the funny thing is? The number one selling fiber product in the world is Fiber One bars, and people love them. Do you know that Fiber One bars don't have any fiber in them? The only source of fiber is xanthan gum, which is a thickening agent that people use. It doesn't have any health benefits whatsoever to it. But that's the number one selling fiber supplement because it tastes good. So people don't know. People, once again, it goes back to the old, well, I'm taking a 1-a-day multivitamin, I must be getting all the vitamins I need, which we all know is bullshit because there's no way you can put enough of the minerals and the vitamins in one pill to get enough of what a bodybuilder or a high exercising endurance athlete would need. So it's the same thing with fiber. You need a potent fiber supplement that's going to do something. Okay, take Fiberlize for 2 weeks, and then take some other fiber. You tell me if there's anything even close to it. You're not going to get the same effect from it because of the potency level of the psyllium. It is what it is. And there's different grades of psyllium too. We buy a very high grade of psyllium because I want the stuff to work. Okay, you want it to have all the health benefits of lowering LDL cholesterol, of lowering blood sugar, of allowing waste products to move effortlessly out of the body, for clearing the colon. There's so many health benefits to taking a good quality fiber supplement that there's no excuse why anyone should not be taking it. If you're taking anything else before that, in other words, if you're trying to take an amino acid product and a pre-workout and you're not taking, a multivitamin, multimineral, essential fatty acid, and fiber supplement, you're an idiot, because you know what? You're actually inhibiting your body's ability to, number one, be healthy, but number two, to actually build and burn fat. Build muscle and burn fat at optimal rates.
Victor Saldana _classic. I feel as though my lats from the front don't flare out, say in a front double bicep. Is that just poor muscle development, insertions, any moves to help target that specifically?
I mean, it means your lats are not big enough, not wide enough. In some people, they don't hit the pose right and they don't pop them out enough. But when I was first started competing, I think it was 168 pounds at my first show, and I was a middleweight. I had been training for 9 months after coming off being a long distance runner for 5 years. And I thought I wasn't opening my lats up. It turns out I just didn't have any lats to pop out. Dorian Yates was a big believer in pullovers, the pullover machine, to really bring the flare out of those lats. I believe that, pull downs and rows and stuff like that, it's just building sheer mass on your lats is really what's going to pop those things out. And that's all there is to it. The wider your back, the better it's going to look. Now, if you're not, like I said, if you're not opening up your lats good enough, that's a different story. But most people's problem is not that. Most people just don't have enough muscle there.
So Chris Cavalos has a question that you and Dan Solomon certainly addressed in your interview, which is going to go up either today or tomorrow on RxMuscle.com. But I want to maybe expand a little bit, and I'll explain. So what do you think of the new form of judging at this year's Olympia, with the audience having a say? And second question, going off social media, recent posts on Big Ramy, do you think he will bring the condition that Phil does? Now, what I'm going to throw into that is, do you think now that this will encourage Olympia athletes, especially for this show, given that they have this scoring, that could actually play a factor that, okay, if they're drumming up their excitement, fans are going to be a little bit more, all right, hey, you know what? Big Ramy's been posting these pictures. He's on the front of my mind. I'm going to vote for him come Olympia time.
I don't think the people's choice is going to have any effect on the outcome of the Olympia. I doubt there'll even be prize money. I would like to think that someone's going to put some prize money up for it, so it's like something to be proud of. But I don't think it really will. I think it's adding interest to the Olympia, and I think that's always important. People like anything that's different. You know what I mean? Oh, I get to vote. The problem is that only the audience is getting to vote. I don't know why they wouldn't have fielded one of these text messaging services where everyone in the world can text in who they think is the best bodybuilder.
Like American Idol.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been smart to do that. That's what Dan and I talk about in the interview a lot. That was my idea for doing that. But like I said, it's going to drum up interest. I don't think it's going to change anything as far as placings. The fact that Ramy, we're all waiting for him to show up at his best. I don't know if he can. I think he physically is capable of it. But I don't know if the people that are advising him will allow him to go low enough in body weight to actually get that shredded, okay, to come to the stage the way we know he needs to. Because the bottom line is that he'll never be more conditioned than Phil. Because Phil is one of the freakiest, hardest guys I've ever seen, compete in bodybuilding. But he doesn't need to be as hard as Phil. He needs to be in shape for Ramy. So if Ramy comes in, grainy, gnarly, hard, even if it's not harder than Phil, he's got way more muscle than Phil does. So he will not be beaten. But he's leaving the door open. And you know what? Phil's laughing all the way to the bank to the tune of $400,000 every single year that he's been collecting that Olympia check. So will it happen again this year? The betting line would say Phil's going to win. The long shots would be would give you the Ramy, the Dexter Jackson in there. I think Dexter Jackson could win the Olympia again if these guys coming off. It has happened before. He won it in 08. Wouldn't it be great 10 years later at 50 years old or almost 49 years old, whatever he is, to win the Olympia again? It could happen. That's what makes the show so exciting.
Costa Rican gains, thoughts, precautions, and what to watch out for when using Clen while on a caloric deficit.
There's really not any danger to clenbuterol if you take it in the right dose. If you're starting out with 20 micrograms twice a day, the only side effects you're going to feel is you might get a headache. The Clen headaches are a pain in the neck. They only usually last about 2 weeks. Sometimes you get those. Sometimes you get cramping. You'll yawn and the muscles right under here will lock up on you, and you'll be like, "What the hell is going on?" But those are the two most common side effects. Clen makes you very strong in the gym too, so you got to be careful. And I think that's why you get cramps sometimes. The muscles contract a little too tight. Other than that, you get a little shaky like this. Your hands get a little wobble for a couple days. Once you get past 2 weeks on Clan, all the side effects go away. All the little doohickeys that are annoying disappear. And what you find is you can take a clenbuterol and fall asleep 10 minutes later. It doesn't stimulate you whatsoever. So once again, get past that 2-week trial period. Once you get past the 2 weeks, then you can start increasing the dose, and I think you'll be fine.
Elizabeth lifts. How do you train a type 1 diabetic? What specific methods do you use when it comes to fat loss and muscle growth?
I don't change anything. It's the same protocol. Essentially, as long as they know how to take care of their blood sugars. In other words, ironically, a low carb diet like my ketogenic diet works really well on type 1s because it really reduces their insulin requirements to almost nothing. Obviously, they're going to still have to take their long-acting insulins, which is easy. They take that twice a day usually. And the short-acting insulins that they normally would take with their meals would be greatly reduced because the carb content is going to be almost non-existent. They will need some because, remember, protein can convert into carbs in a certain degree, but they're not going to need nearly the amount of insulin that they normally would take off season. So ketogenic diets work really well, but that's not to say that type 1 diabetics can't eat carb diets either. They just have to know how many grams of carbs they're eating so they can calculate how much fast-acting insulin to take with it. So I help a lot of type 1 diabetics, and to me, they're a pleasure to work with because they micromanage every aspect of what they do. So they always know their blood sugars. They always know how much insulin they're taking. So to me, that's a lot of data to work with, and I can manipulate that easy. And if I need to reduce carbohydrates or reduce something in their diet, they know, and I could talk to them about how much insulin we need to reduce. And as they get leaner and leaner and their body fat gets lower and lower and their food gets lower and lower, they have to reduce the amount of insulin they're taking.
D. Carter, if you're on HRT, 200 mg of test per week, and HCG every day, and 1 mg of anastrozole every other day, what should that bring your testosterone level up to?
There's no formula that you could possibly use to figure that out. Every person is individual. I know guys that can take HCG and their testosterone will be through the roof, and I know other guys take HCG and their testosterone's low, and they're both using the same source of HCG. So everyone's body responds to those releasing peptides or releasing hormones, if you want to call them, in different ways. So I could never quantify what the person's levels would be.
Swaggy T, when it comes to old school bodybuilding, the golden era, I know most of them did super low carb, high fat, high protein diets. How are they able to look so full for contests and shoots on low or no carbs?
Well, they were basically doing similar to ketogenic diets. They just would eat a lot of red meat back then. They really didn't know about essential fatty acids. They would just do a ton of like red meat and butter and stuff like that, and cream, sometimes they would use heavy cream, and they would carb up at the end. I mean, that's when I put someone on a keto, not everyone knows this. I don't put everyone on a ketogenic diet. Not everyone needs it, but if you're on a ketogenic diet, or even if you're on a low carb diet, at the end we carb you up. So carbs loading is just putting glycogen into the muscle. When glycogen, which is the stored form of glucose, goes into the muscle, it pulls water with it. So when you carb up, you can eat no carbs for the whole year. And if you carb up 2 weeks before a show, you're going to look just as good as if you ate carbs the entire year. It doesn't matter. Glycogen stores, which is what causes that fullness in the muscle, is like gasoline in your car, a gas tank in your car. If the car is not running on empty all the time, you might run out and you might get, this car may slow down. You might have to add some gas here and there. Okay, but if you fill the tank up after even a year of running it low, nothing doesn't change how the car performs. The car will still perform the same.
We've gotten questions before regarding controlling acne, but Dave DeCoke wants to know some insight as to what to do for acne control both on and off cycle.
Well, everyone breaks out differently. I suffered with acne for many years because I didn't have it grossly, but when I would take certain steroid cycles, it would get worse. And no one wants nasty skin, and no one wants nasty skin on stage. And I eventually took Accutane, and it helped a lot. I still broke out, but I didn't break out like with big boils and stuff like that. So the question is, how do you control the acne? Well, a lot of guys have been putting on my Testalize product, which has some DHT blunting agents. So it doesn't eliminate DHT, but it reduces it. And usually guys break out because when they start a cycle, it blows their DHT levels through the roof, dihydrotestosterone. And that's what's responsible for acne. So if you can reduce that a little bit naturally, where you're not eliminating it totally by taking drugs like finasteride, okay, you get usually the acne goes away pretty easily, assuming that you're conducting yourself and taking showers and keeping clean. So I have a lot of guys, especially young guys in their teens, that are using Testalize, and not just for the testosterone boosting effects and the estrogen lowering effects, but because it reduces DHT and it solves the acne problem. A lot of women take it for that same reason, and for hair. A lot of women tend to thin out when they're bodybuilding because maybe it boosts their natural testosterone, natural DHT levels, and then some women take drugs that they shouldn't be taking. But the Testalize seems to also temper that DHT effect, thus, allowing their hair to become thicker and reducing, the incidence of hair loss. So, for what it's worth, try it. That would be my first line of defense. If you're having acne issues, you're having hair loss issues, try Testalize 3 pills twice a day. If that doesn't work after a couple weeks, then you could think about using stronger drugs like finasteride. But I wouldn't knee-jerk use those right off the bat if you can avoid it.
Take a couple of more questions. Barbarian B, your view on giant sets for muscle growth, and would you regularly change up your exercises?
The old Milo Sarsha giant sets. I actually like giant sets. I think they're good. I just wouldn't use them every single week. For limited periods of time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and then go back to something else. The problem with giant sets is they're a pain in the ass because you got to run around the whole gym. You have to make sure that you have 4 machines or 5 machines open, that no one's using them. It becomes too stressful. I did a lot of supersetting and drop setting when I would compete. I would do, like, let's say I'm doing bicep cable curls. I might then go do tricep overheads immediately after, no rest. Or I might do, if I'm on the bench, I might bench press 315 for 6 reps, strip off a plate, 225 for another 4 reps, strip off a plate, 135 for another 4 to 6 reps, and that would be the end. That would be the end of the benching workout. And so what I was basically doing is I was lifting heavy initially, then to get more reps, rather than try to do forced reps or try to strain with the wrong muscles, I just lowered the weight. It still felt super heavy because I had just finished a set with a heavier amount of weight, and I would blow out as many of those. And then when that was too heavy, I would lower it again. So I was almost doing forced reps, but in a drop set type of situation. So it's always a good idea to mix up your training. I can give people a template of here's a great workout, but you should always tweak around the exercises, change the order, change the tempo, change how many you do. Sometimes drop set, sometimes superset it. And that's just called variation in training, and that's what usually leads to the most muscle growth.
Inspector America Dave, I'm 50 years old. In general, is there a way for a person to improve recovery ability outside of supplements, nutrition, so on and so forth? Any training methods or techniques you suggest?
As you get older, it's harder to recover. You shouldn't be training as many days a week. Obviously, taking supplements like growth hormone and testosterones are going to help you recover quicker, no doubt about that. Sleeping more is going to help you recover better. Eating the right diet is going to help you recover better. So if you can maximize all those areas I just mentioned, you should be able to recover with no problem.
Last question from Lee Axon. How do you coach your clients who constantly fail on their nutrition plans? Do you just say, okay, keep going, or do you start to tell them off? If I feel that they're cheating and they're not following, I have guys, and I did a rant on this, and I'm still getting guys that are using sugar-free ketchups, and they're using, another guy sent me, I like adobo, spices, but I'm not dieting. If you read the ingredient list on adobo spices, the third ingredient is sugar, okay? So people make such stupid mistakes, and then they wonder why they're not losing weight. So you got to really read all the food packages that you have. Don't just look at the nutritionals, look at the ingredient list. Read what's in there so you see what's in there. Just because it says, less than 1 gram of carb on the label doesn't mean there's not sugar in there. There could be a gram in there, and the serving size might be ridiculously slow or low, and so no one's using 1 serving size, they're using 5 serving sizes, and before you know it, you're consuming, an extra 10, 20 grams of carbs, with your meal that you didn't even know you were getting in. So I think a lot of people sabotage themselves. If it's a person who's just cheating and they actually even admit it to you, and I have clients like that too, I'm like, look, you're not going to do well at the show, and you got no one to blame but yourself. So you can either skip the show or do the show knowing that you didn't give your best, and then next time around, you'll buckle down and you'll be 100%. And you can't be emotionally invested in it in the sense that you're going to get upset because someone's not listening to you. It's their life, it's their option. All you can do is give them the reality of the situation.
they can either embrace that and try to be better next time, or they can say, F you, I don't agree with you, and leave. But the only person they're lying to is themselves.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. For Dave Palumbo and our producer, Tyler Shore, I'm Sadiq Baruki. We'll see you next week.